Hello and welcome to the second episode of the template tutorial series. Running a very large template in Cubase requires considerable computing power, so in this video I'll give you a few tips on how to optimize your Windows PC for working with audio. If you happen to be working on a Mac, then there won't be a lot of relevant information for you in this episode. Macs do not really require a lot of additional optimization, but it can still be beneficial to turn off any unnecessary background processes and to choose energy saver settings focused on high performance. But let's get back to PCs. First, we will look at BIOS or UEFI level optimizations. You can access your computer BIOS or UEFI by hitting delete or the F2 key while your computer is starting up. I have to warn you at this stage, any changes that you make in the BIOS should be done at your own risk. It is possible to really mess things up by changing the wrong settings. I don't recommend changing any of the settings apart from the ones that I will describe next. Depending on the manufacturer and version, your BIOS or UEFI will look slightly different from mine, but this is how it looks like on my build using an Asus motherboard. Also, some of the settings that we're looking for might have slightly different names on your system, however they should still be relatively easy to find. First thing you want to do is navigate to the advanced settings page and find the power saving and dynamic performance options for your CPU. Here you want to turn off Enhanced Intel Speed Step or EIST. This is a power saving feature that turns down your CPU when power is not needed, conserving energy and building up less heat. You'll also want to turn off C states. This setting allows for your CPU to sleep while idle. Sometimes this option is also called Disable CPU Idle State. You may also wish to experiment with turning off Turbo Boost. Personally, I find that leaving Turbo Boost turned on gives me slightly better performance, but your mileage may vary. All of these options have to do with regulating the output of your CPU, and they can cause spikes in performance. Alright, next let's boot up Windows and have a look at how we can optimize it for maximum performance. I am running Windows 10, but if you're on an earlier version, then most of this still applies to you. First, let's open up Control Panel. Go into Hardware and Sound, and find the power options. You'll want to choose High Performance, and then change Plan Settings. Open the Advanced Power Settings. Here you want to make sure that you have the following options selected. Under Hard Disk, set it to Never, which you can get by typing in 0. For USB, Selective Suspend setting should be disabled. This avoids any issues with USB devices being powered down when not in use and could include any USB devices that you have connected. Then under Processor Power Management, just double check that both the minimum processor state and maximum processor state are set to 100%. As I mentioned earlier, any change in your CPU power can produce spikes in audio performance. Next, let's look at sound options. Navigate back to Hardware and Sound and select Sound. As you can see, I've gone as far as disabling every onboard audio device, which isn't completely necessary, but you definitely want any HDMI audio device disabled, as there is a chance that they will interfere with your main audio interface. Also, if you happen to have an NVIDIA graphics card, you'll want to avoid installing any HDMI audio drivers that come with those cards. If you've already installed those, simply remove them from Add or Remove Programs in your Windows settings. Next thing you want to do is to make sure that Windows sounds are being played back on a different output channel from your main DAW audio. In my setup here, System Sound stands for outputs 1 and 2, and that's selected as the default playback device, while any sound from Cubase ends up in outputs 3 and 4. You can choose your Cubase audio outputs under Devices, VST Connections, Outputs. Next, open up the System Settings in Control Panel. Navigate to Advanced System Settings, open the Advanced tab. Open Performance Settings, then select the Advanced tab. Under Processor Scheduling, choose Background Services. This improves performance of your audio drivers as they run as background services. Any firewall or antivirus software that you run on your computer can interfere with audio recording and playback. However, you should only turn them off at your own risk, especially if your computer is connected to the internet. I personally have antivirus software still running because I receive a lot of files from different clients and don't want to gamble with one of them being infected. Also, I've experimented with turning antivirus off completely, but I saw virtually no increase in performance. However, I have completely turned off Windows Firewall. You can do that from System and Security, Windows Firewall, turn Windows Firewall on or off. You'll also want to turn off Windows updates. These are notoriously difficult to get rid of, but a nice trick that works is to change your connection properties and to make your main internet connection metered. In order to do that, simply open up Network and Internet Options, hit Change Connection Properties, and turn on the slider that reads Set as Metered Connection. Metered connections are meant for limited bandwidth situations, like when you're connecting to the internet over a phone network. This way, Windows thinks that you're paying for each bit of data that you download, and will not download any updates. However, make sure that once in a while you turn the setting back off to get the latest security updates, as those can be crucial for your system. And finally, you can look at the various startup processes that Windows launches automatically and disable any that you don't need. To access those settings, open Task Manager by right-clicking on the Start button and select the Startup tab. As you can see here, I've disabled iTunes Helper and Spotify Web Helper, amongst a few others. To check the performance of your system, you can use a freeware tool like LatencyMon. Let this utility run for a while and it will point out any problems or conflicts. This is an excellent way of finding issues with your system and a great tool for troubleshooting. On a final note, make sure that you always install the latest versions of all your hardware drivers. This includes any motherboard-specific drivers, USB drivers, but also drivers for your GPU, audio interface, or any other peripherals that you might be using. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode where we finally start building our template.